We want to bring you more on the Lindsay Clancy trial. We're joined by CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe. Good morning, Rebecca. In about an hour and a half, closing arguments will begin. You had more than 80 witnesses testify during the trial. What did you make of the final day of witness testimony?
I think the final day of witness testimony was mixed. The prosecution called a very strong expert witness who was also an FBI agent who testified to this ultimate question, saying that in his judgment, Lindsay Clancy possessed criminal responsibility. She understood right from wrong. She could control and conform her conduct. That said, on cross-examination, I think the defense had a couple of very good points. First of all, undermining some of the credentials of this expert, but really mostly walking him through what the prosecution had promised in their opening statement and having their own witness, the prosecution, the government's witness, say he did not think that was accurate. So he didn't think this portrait of this calculating woman who had planned this and intended to murder her children, he said that that minimized her mental illness. So I think there were points that were scored on both sides.
And we would expect each side to emphasize those arguments this morning as they close their case effectively. If you're in the jury, what are you actually weighing specifically?
So, I think that the jury has, in this case, it really comes down to these warring experts. And in assessing the experts, I think it's going to be far less important what their credentials are, and more important, whether or not what they said matches how the jury heard the evidence of the days and months leading up to this incident and that specific day. So that the way that they'll assess which expert they believe is by matching what they said to all of the testimony they heard. And in the end, do they believe that this was somebody who was seeking medical advice medical help over a long period of time, not getting the help that she wanted, a disease that was mounting and finally turned into a psychosis that in which she couldn't control her conduct? Or is this somebody who suffered from depression, sure, but was so calculating and so planning that, in fact, it was evidence that she had the ability to control her conduct in this incident?
Our legal system puts so much value and weight in the decision of a jury. I've never sat in a jury. I'm not sure if you have. They have to be unanimous. And I'm wondering if this decision is made quickly, what that might hint to you. Give us some insight of what the juries are being tasked with and what they will experience today.
Right, Errol. So I haven't been on a jury either, but I have argued in front of a jury. And I think that, maybe it doesn't give you exactly the kind of insight it would if you were on that jury. But, I do think that generally, if a jury comes to a conclusion fairly rapidly, that usually means that, they are unanimous, and it could be unanimous in terms of acquittal. But normally that is a sign that they have agreed with the government's case. And if they deliberate for a longer time, usually there is disagreement among that jury, and that can ultimately end up in a hung jury or an acquittal. It's not, a rule, but it often happens that way. So if we get, a quick verdict here, I think that is something that a sign that the government would take, that the defense would take here as a positive.
All right, Rebecca Roiphe, with your insight, thanks so much.